Oh, man, I am tanner, fatter, out of regulation, too much hair, but man, I'm well rested, well motivated. Glad to be back. Glad to be back in the saddle. Glad to be back, just interacting with everyone. That was one of the things about vacation that was nice, but at the same time I missed. It was nice being, away from all the conversations and all the steps that needed to be taken to get things to the next level, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it's nice to be back, and it's nice to be back talking about mindfulness because I will tell you that if you want to understand how well your practice is coming, spend a week with your family. That is a classic enlightenment joke, right? That goes back, since forever. You want to see how enlightened you are? Go spend a week with your family. But anyway, the reason that it helped, gosh, it was such a big deal. It was such a big deal, and the reason why it was such a big deal was largely because I could perceive things before I did them. That was the biggest thing. I could see a situation, and instead of, I was upstream of moments that I would have been kind of lost downstream in. It's like, here's where a waterfall is. Typically, I would be over the waterfall before I would be like making a move or aware of what's going on. So, boom, I'd already be in. But now it's like, I see what's going on here. I'm just going to go to the shore, right? Instead of just falling off the waterfall. And so examples of that were just interacting with my wife, interacting with my kids, knowing when to move and when not to move. Those were the things that really showed up, and what I had to contend with, and what I've just gotten better at contending with, and then I'll go into the topic of this week and today. What I've gotten better at contending with is what happens when the spin up happens. So to get spin up is to go into the fight or flight or freeze side of your nervous system. So remember, you have two sides of your nervous system. You've got a parasympathetic side, which settles everything and softens everything. Then you've got the sympathetic side, which speeds things up, activates things, gets things going. And so those two sides are always at play. Okay, and the way they represent inside of you, so these things are going on at a systemic level, but what happens inside of you is all of your systems, including all of your organs, respond differently to whether you're in sympathetic or parasympathetic. So what happens is the spin up takes place, and the spin up can take place either in the moment or in anticipation of the moment, or as a result of the moment. So it can take place before the moment, during the moment, and after the moment. It's kind of tricky. But the reason why it kind of makes sense and starts to get cool is that, like, you start to see in the beginning of a mindfulness practice, you mostly just see when you're mindless. So you just start to see, like, no wonder that happened. I was lost. I was completely in my head, or blah, 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 blah. So you start to see that. You start to see when you're mindless. What happens when you start to really practice mindfulness is you start to be mindful of what's showing up. So a memory shows up. Oh, you said this, or you said that, or you were going to do this, or you were going to do that. You see it. You settle it. A moment shows up. Kids are fighting. Blah, 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 blah. You feel all that. You settle it. You remember something and you have an edge. You remember something. You're like, oh, this is going to be the thing. But instead of like rushing back in, you settle. And why do you settle? What does it mean to settle? Well, I'll explain that exactly in this today's topic. So I had the absolute kind of luck and privilege of being at the lake. The lake has a lot of land. The land's not ours, but we get to use it. We have some land, but then there's land all around where we live. And so anyway, I got to go back to this back area. So it's totally private. I'm by myself. I got all the time in the world I want. And so I started training some of our mindful marksmanship drills that I created with a guy named Joe Hamilton. And Joe Hamilton is the marksman extraordinaire. But anyway, he taught me a drill called ball and dummy drill. And what the ball and dummy drill does is it tricks you into thinking that there's a bullet in the chamber of a firearm when there might not be. And so the way you do it is you jam rounds into the magazine. Some are live and some are dummy rounds. And so when you jam them into the magazine and then you go to shoot, what happens is you come online to fire, you come online to go through your engagement, and then you pull. Actually, I got a dummy weapon over here. Here's my little dummy weapon. All right, so you come online, okay? You come online to shoot. Your weapon is loaded, okay? But you don't know if there's a live round or a dummy round, okay? So you come online, you're about to fire your weapon. The weapon goes off, it's a live round, boom, right? There's a boom. So you feel that there's an explosion that takes place, the slide racks, the weapon goes off, a bullet shoots out of the weapon, it's gonna, it hits the target, there's kind of an eruption of stuff, maybe it hits the dirt in the background, whatever. So you have a clear understanding of what this thing's doing, okay? You know exactly what's going to happen when you pull that trigger, and it's the same every single time. And then you're about to come online, you're about to pull the trigger, you pull the trigger, boom, you pull the trigger, and no bullet goes off. And what happens when you pull the trigger, no bullet goes off, you anticipate a bullet going off, but because there's no bullet, you actually you can, what we call push the gun or pull the gun or push the gun. And what that is you're anticipating the shot and you're preparing for it and you're actually recoiling as a result of the anticipation. So you're moving the gun because of your reaction to the explosion of the gun when it fires, and you don't need to. That's what it means to be spun up. That's what it means to be in your head. It's been incredibly effective teaching veterans how to study mindfulness through marksmanship, like the ball and dummy drill. Like you'll see, and I'm all jacked up here on my form, so back up. You see that, right? You see, and for me, it's that. It's subtle, right? It's just a little kind of thing. So I've been doing this now. I've been doing the ball and dummy drill for a couple of years now. And what I noticed this time when I studied it was that the actual moment itself, the moment of choice, right? There's a moment in every situation where you have an opportunity to settle or you have the opportunity to okay, I'm going to move away from the waterfall, or you're in it. And it's very, very subtle. It's very subtle. And so the basics of mindfulness, coming back to this whole week, the basics of mindfulness is capturing that moment. That's the mindful moment. The mindful moment is the difference between doing something intentionally or just doing something because that's what you do it. And that's what I mean with the firearm. When we're studying the ball and dummy drill, we come to the wall or the very edge of the trigger press. So right, any more press of the trigger and that weapon's going off. So that's the edge right there. So if I pull the trigger anymore, that hammer's going to fall, and then boom, the weapon's going to go off. Okay, but at that edge, right there, right the moment, the wall, right before the trigger press, right there, that's the mindful moment. That's it. Now, in the beginning, just recognizing the moment is enough, right? That's progress. That's progress, recognizing the moment. But what happens as you practice, okay, is that the moment goes from being like this big, right? Can you see that? That big to that big. So it's like barely noticeable. You can barely see it. But then it gets like big. And that's what I noticed over the weekend. The weekend, I was like, oh, damn. It got bigger. The mindful moment got bigger. Like, pff, I didn't realize it could do that. But when it got bigger, what it meant was there was much less. I still did it. I still sometimes pushed the gun, right? I still messed up the weapon at some moments. But more often than not, I pulled the trigger and the weapon didn't move. And I could tell that the weapon didn't move because my shot groups were tight. They were tight. I don't know if I still have them, but they were tight. Like I was putting 5 rounds in a silver dollar. 5 rounds. That's not bad with a pistol. And so I was very excited about this. And the reason I was so excited about this is because not only did it play out in the experience with the firearm, but it played out with family. There was just more space to make a move. And that is, oh man, just in the realm of firearms, I was hitting the target in a much more accurate, controlled way. In the context of my family, I wasn't engaging in things that didn't need to be engaged with. And instead I had the patience to just kind of let them kind of play out. And then whatever showed up, I still had the patience, right? It wasn't like I was studying mindfulness and then stopped. I mean, I was always present. And what happened was members of the family, from my wife down to my little ones, experienced what they were experiencing far more for themselves than what I wanted them to experience or what I wanted them to do. And so what that meant was I didn't make any demands. I mostly went with the flow of things. And in a weird way, I think all 3 of them kind of came to their own conclusions about stuff that were the conclusions that I was trying to get them to in the first place, right? Like, you know, it was almost as though everything was kind of working itself towards sustainability anyway. And what I was doing was getting in the way and then causing disruptions that then meant that my family was interacting with me instead of their own stuff. And if I just got the hell out of the way, they would get to the places that, you know, I had imagined or I would have hoped they'd get to anyway. Like it seemed easier, right? That's just what it was. It just seemed easier. And not so much in the moment. The moments could be hard, right? The moments of things that were kind of really just like come on, you didn't notice that, or you didn't see that, or I've told you this 4 times, why haven't you done it? Like it's hard inside those moments, especially moments where you're just like, you're being an idiot, or you're totally not paying attention at all, and you're getting yourself worked up for nothing, or stop fighting with your sister. Like there were still moments that were challenging, but more often than not, the challenge wasn't that big. It wasn't too overwhelming, and I just kind of let things kind of play themselves through, and it got to smoothness without me having to do anything. And it was just like, well, that's awesome. That is awesome. So anyway, this week, the conversation is all about the basics of mindfulness. And, you know, today the topic, of course, is guns and firearms, and just reiterating the main theme of kind of Mondays is that your marksmanship training, is really a great foundation for mindfulness. I mean, goodness gracious, the fact that you're a veteran and trained in firearms means that you have the psychological and emotional control that will enable you to pick up and run with the practice of mindfulness. And so I encourage you to pay more attention to this type of stuff because it really is an asset that you're underutilizing if you are a veteran and you're not studying mindfulness. You already know it. All right, so let's go through some bells. Let's get to the actual training itself. Hey, Jessica, good to see you. And let's see who else. Hey, Megan, what's up? Jessica and Megan, good to see y'all. So get yourself squared away. Another analogy I was thinking about this week was make a hole. Remember that? Make a hole, make a hole, make a hole. So what does that do? It just, all the clutter, right? All the clutter gets spread and you walk right through it. That's the mindful moment. Make a hole. All right, so time to make a hole. Here comes first bell. Start to slow everything down. What are you going to do with your eyes? Sense of sound. Sense of smell. Touch, temperature. Taste in the mouth. Second bell. Notice ground, where you're connected. Pelvis. Core. Heart space. Throat. Top of the head. Feel your whole body. And once you're feeling your whole body, see if you can make yourself 5% more comfortable. 5% more comfortable. Third bell. Breathing. Just notice where it's at. Notice how you're breathing. Starting at the chest. Lift your heart. Pull your shoulder blades together. Full breath. Sink your heart. Round your shoulders forward. Full breath. Lift your heart. Pull your shoulders back and down. Back and down. Lift your heart, pull your shoulders back and down, full breath. Round your shoulders forward. Keep your heart lifted, full breath. Pull your shoulders back, dip your heart, full breath. Find the middle. Find the area of chest and shoulders that you like best. 3 rounds, full breath. Sit quietly for a minute. The basics of mindfulness are attention and psychological and emotional control. And what happens when you pay attention is that what shows up over time, and I mean it shows up right away, but it also shows up over time as increased choice. And so that choice shows up in one, just recognizing you have it. But two, choice starts to become bigger and more accessible. It's like, in the beginning, choice is like threading a needle. It's tricky. It can be done, but it's tricky. Over practice, choice becomes like, putting a basketball through a basketball hoop. It's like, it's tricky, and the further away you get, the harder you get. But if you're close, right, and you're paying good attention, it's not so hard. And then over time further, choice is like throwing a beach ball into an Olympic-sized pool. It's hard to miss. And so what I encourage you today is to just recommit yourself, especially as a warrior. You've already got this in your system, okay? Especially as a warrior, to recommit yourself to being mindful and to bringing mindfulness into your day, and to be thinking about mindfulness and studying mindfulness. So, my intention today is to kind of reconnect to the kind of focuses and businesses and communities that I have, taken a vacation from, kind of to be reconnected, but also to be just very attentive to all the choice that I know is available if I pay attention. So that's my intention for today. It's good to be back and interacting with all you lovely people. I hope each of you has a decent Monday, and we'll see you tomorrow.